Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the El Cajon City Council meeting. The meeting is called to order, and I'd like to ask the Deputy City Clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Kendrick is absent. All others are present.
Would you all mind standing with me for a brief moment of silence? Stay with me for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a brief moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. The city clerk posted orders of adjournment of the December 12th, 2023 meeting and the agenda of the January 9th, 2024 meeting in accordance with state law, City Council, and Housing Authority policy. We have one presentation for today for National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. And I'd like to invite Chief Moulton to come to the podium and accept the proclamation, which I will read. Hello, Chief. Thank you for coming. I'd like to read this proclamation for you, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Whereas the health and safety of the citizens of the city of El Cajon, California is important to the happiness, prosperity, and well-being of our city's families and community. And whereas the dedicated men and women of the El Cajon Police Department play a vital role in upholding the principle of justice, protecting our citizens, and maintaining public order, these brave individuals serve with unwavering dedication, often placing themselves in harm's way to safeguard our community and its residents. And whereas Law Enforcement Appreciation Day provides an opportunity for our community to express gratitude and recognize the sacrifices made by the members of our law enforcement agencies, the City of El Cajon values the collaborative efforts between law enforcement and the community to build trust, enhance public safety, and foster positive relationships. Now, therefore, I, Bill Wells, Mayor of the City of El Cajon, together with the City Council, do hereby proclaim January 9th, 2024, as Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. And we call upon the residents, businesses, and community organizations to join us in expressing our heartfelt appreciation for the dedication, courage, and sacrifice of our law enforcement officers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behalf of the men and women of the El Cajon Police Department, Mr. Mayor and Council, we appreciate your recognition. Thank you.
Thanks. And before you run off, I'm sure everybody wants to give you our appreciation for what all of you do, and so you can take that back to the people that are in your department.
Absolutely, and the men and women of the El Cajon Police Department, I talk to them on a daily basis, and they certainly appreciate the support of you and the council.
Chief, I can't thank you and your staff and your officers enough for representing the city of El Cajon and treating its citizens fairly and justly. And it's fitting that you've been doing a tour on camera. And I just got to say thank you so much for being a voice of reason out in the public and representing our department with the utmost respect and honor, and getting our message out to residents of some of the challenges that we're facing in the community and how they need to be solved. And I know that you speak for not just the City of El Cajon Police Department, but I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I'm assuming all law enforcement across the state of California. So please, again, give our thanks to every law enforcement officer that we have in our department. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, and that wouldn't be possible. I wouldn't be able to go around the news stations and talk about what I've been talking about without the support of, the city manager, assistant city manager, and of course all of you.
Well done, Chief. You guys are doing an extraordinary job with integrity, and that's really important in today's society, is to have law enforcement deal with the public with integrity, and I think that everyone does that. I've not met one single officer that I even had a question on. They were all very nice, and not just because of who I am, but because of who they are. Thank you.
It's good to hear. Thank you.
Chief, thank you for thought leadership, is what I call it. When you have the ability to go out and say what you've said in the past couple of weeks via documentary, that shows El Cajon is a leader in some of these discussions around this topic. Certainly, the police department is an outstanding teammate You had excellent teams with the marketing department with the documentary. You've had excellent teamwork with Home Start and some of the providers there. So you have an excellent team that you've built, and kudos to all your officers.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
We're now at consent items. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion according to the recommendation listed below. With the concurrence of the City Council, a council member or person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you wish to pull any of the consent items? Staff?
No, sir.
I'll make a motion then to approve the consent items. Please vote. Oh, I am sorry. Are there any speaker cards, Jen?
No speaker cards for this item, sir.
Okay, then do you need us to vote again?
Yes, please.
Please vote. Thank you, Steve.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
We're now at public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time that the item is heard. However, City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Jen, do we have any speaker cards for public comment?
Yes, we have one speaker for Hunter Plesha.
Hello, sir. I see you.
Honorable Mayor and council members, thank you for granting me an audience today. My name is Hunter Plesha with Forager Data. I'm here to bring to your attention El Cajon's problem with unlicensed business activity. Section 5 of the City Code states the purpose of the business license is for raising municipal revenue. Unfortunately, much of that revenue is missing. During a recent examination, I saw a large amount of citywide business activity clearly subject to Section 5 operating unlicensed. This means that the City of El Cajon is leaving a considerable amount of money on the table every month in lost revenue. I imagine the city currently has measures in place for business license enforcement. Whatever the methods, they're not working, or at least not enough. That's why I'm here. I'm referring to the large amount that's been going undetected, and it's been going on for years. While I can tell city staff about this, they're often unable or unwilling to do anything about it individually, likely because there's no easy fix, so it gets ignored. This is why I'm addressing the City Council. The problem of lost revenue is now brought out into the open so the Council can officially be made aware. This creates a fork in the road. Will the City of El Cajon allow the code violations to continue? Or will the city finally capture the lost revenue that's duly owed? Should the city decide to capture this lost revenue, I can help. My company specializes in identifying and addressing businesses that have skirted the city's license requirement. We can find unlicensed activity that's virtually undetectable by all other means, and we work with cities to report and assist bringing these businesses into compliance. We'd be happy to explore a provisionary collaboration with the city, perhaps even a pilot program, in which we assist the city in recovering lost revenue. Should this be your path forward, I can be reached at hunter@foragerdata.com. Thank you for your consideration.
Hey, let me see if there's any questions for you. Michelle has a question.
Hunter, give me that again. That's Hunter at
Forager Data.
Forager Data.
Forager, so Forager data.com.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have a sense of how much revenue you think we're missing out of and what types of businesses you think we're missing licenses on?
Yes. So, I mean, at the very least, thousands of dollars a month. So I know that one big hole in enforcement right now is real estate-related activity and also landlords, which are obligated to have a business license, but also a real estate agency that might be in a neighboring city that are required by municipal code to operate here, and they're not paying, whereas somewhere that's addressed here locally is. And then just simply, there's so many businesses now that are operating from a remote position, but are going in and carrying on ongoing business activity. And traditional methods like going to the Secretary of State or going to the Franchise Tax Board aren't picking up this type of new mobile business.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Hunter. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone. Have a great day.
All right, there are no written communications and no public hearings on today's agenda. We have 5 administrative reports on today's agenda. Item 9 is to reject the sole proposal for the design, build, operate of digital message board. And I would ask staff to please tell us about this.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. As you're aware of, these type of things are usually done on consent. However, we recognize that this is an item of particular interest to the council. It's on your one of your city council goals, and so we felt it would be appropriate to discuss this as an administrative hearing and to explain to you what brought us to this point. As you know, anytime we do a request for proposals, the responsive proposals would be consistent with the applicable governing documents in the case of whatever we're doing the RFP for. So in this case, with the digital message board, the governing document was the zoning code. So any responsive bidder that wanted to be a vendor for this project would be submitting a proposal that's consistent with the zoning code. We did go through the RFP process. This was the second RFP process that we did on this project. The first one was about 18 months ago or so. That vendor had to withdraw, having nothing to do with the project itself. There were just some issues with the vendor that they had to withdraw from the project. So we went out again with the RFP. We had one responsive bidder who was interviewed by a 3-person staff panel, and that was a responsive bidder. It was a bid that was submitted that was consistent with the zoning code, and so we moved into the contract negotiation phase. As we were going through the contract negotiation phase, new issues continued to be introduced on a piecemeal basis that would have required the council to consider various amendments to various parts of the zoning code that staff had concerns about whether or not would be consistent with council stated policies. It became clear that in staff's opinion, as we moved through the process, the vendor's goals and their method of negotiation was going to be contrary to the city, and the partnership would not be productive. So under those circumstances, staff is suggesting that you reject the proposal. Again, we recognize that this is an important issue for council. We are examining other ways to bring this back to you, so it's not dead. We will be looking at other ways, and we do plan to bring this topic back to you sometime this year, probably within the next 6 to 8 months. And I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Well, thank you very much. Council, do you have any questions of staff? Jen, do we have any speaker cards for this?
No speaker cards were received.
All right. Seems pretty straightforward. Is there any discussion, or would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll move to reject the sole proposal as outlined in the staff report.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
Item 10 is a report on the automated license plate reader program, and I would like to ask Chief Moulton to come up and explain this to us.
Good afternoon again.
Hi, Chief.
It's my pleasure to give you a quick update on the automated license plate reader program that we have. Do we have the PowerPoint? If we don't, I can give it to you anyways as it comes up. So we essentially started the program for all intents and purposes on August 6th of last year, so a little over 5 months ago. In the program's first 4 months, and again, this data is from the date of the staff report, which was December 13th. So between August 6th and December 13th, we recovered 68 stolen vehicles for a combined value of $622,000. And with those recoveries resulted in a total of 82 arrests. One of the things I'd like to point out that's very important is the folks that we're arresting, the vehicles that we're recovering, they're not just stolen vehicle arrests. There's a lot of other crimes tied to those things, and those crimes include things like possession of burglary tools, here we go, possession of illegal firearms, possession of narcotics, possession of stolen property, identity theft, fraud, and outstanding felony arrest warrants. So that's an important thing to note, because we're not just arresting people that are committing auto thefts. We're arresting people that are committing a number of crimes. Another very important thing to note is we know that people steal cars to commit other very serious felonies. And some of those are included in this list here. Armed robbery, shootings, ATM thefts, the very high loss, sophisticated burglaries that we see, human trafficking, drug trafficking, just to name a few. So it's important to note, we'll never know what impact we have on preventing some of those crimes by stopping them before they occur, by stopping vehicles immediately when they enter the city that are stolen. Again, this is just a short update. We were going to give a 6-month update. We kind of sped up that timeline for this reason. We're currently in a 3-year contract with our vendor, Flock Safety. They raised their rates in January. So they proactively reached out to us and offered us to extend our contract for 2 more years at a significant cost savings. We would save about $40,000 over those 2 years. So that's something I'll let the city manager talk a little bit more about. But that's why we're bringing this to you early. Even if we do extend the contract, the contract can be terminated at any time. Graham, do you want to mention anything else about that?
Well, I think that was the important thing as we analyzed it. My concern would be tying the hands of the city or the city council to extend an agreement, but the provision of us being able to terminate the agreement still exists. So whether it's a 5-year agreement or a 3-year agreement is kind of irrelevant, since we have the ability to cancel the contract.
And with that, I'll be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Questions for the chief?
So in your opinion, Chief, Chief, this is a very successful program.
I think the evidence is clear that it's been very successful. Those stats that I laid out to begin with, those are vehicles that we likely would not have found. Those are people that we likely would not have arrested, criminals that we likely wouldn't have taken off the streets without the use of that technology.
And I think it's important to know that these are real case scenarios or real life scenarios. I know back in '98, my car was stolen, and it was used in an attempted murder case. So I know that it does happen. And just the cars that we've recovered, just the items that we've taken off the street, the drugs, the weapons, the bad guys that were doing other things. I think that's really important for the public to know. One thing that I would like to see is possibly an educational piece about this system. And I don't know if that's something that we can work with our marketing manager, or, if you want to come right out of your department. But just something, it doesn't have to be extensive, but maybe screenshots. Of course, covering up identifying information, but to let the public know this is what we're doing, because the demo that I saw in your office was wonderful, and it really helped to illuminate exactly how it goes. And I think the public sometimes doesn't quite understand what it is that we're doing, and that we're not going out and using it for expired registration tags, and we're not using it for other reasons, but it's simply a stolen vehicle. And if they're doing bad stuff on the side, well, we're going to take them off the street as well. So thank you very much. And like I said, maybe an educational piece could come out on this, just like we do everything else.
Absolutely. It's something we can look into.
Thank you.
Go. Just a quick question. If, and this may be for the city manager, do we know if we were to cancel the agreement sometime in the future, would the city be prorated a refund based off of the timeline, or would we just do we know that agreement in detail?
Mayor and Council, we just received the agreement. We have an agreement in place. It's a 1 year plus 2 options to renew. The language that I'm seeing is one that if we decide to terminate, we pay essentially the remainder of the term. So what we'd like to do is structure it as 1 year with renewal terms, and so we're only out there 1 year worth of costs. Now, whether Flock will agree to that, I don't know. But that's something we'll need to negotiate if that's what the council wants to do. And we are not approving anything tonight. It's simply to give us direction, and if direction is to negotiate, we'll do that and have it back at the next available meeting. So
Super helpful.
I think
Thank
there's
you.
a time consideration as well. There are some savings in the offer they made that would require us to complete the negotiations by the end of the month.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
Along those lines, I think we were one of the first. What were we? We weren't the first city in the region to do this, were we?
Yeah, Carlsbad has had a pretty extensive license plate reading program for quite some time.
But maybe the second.
We were right there with some other cities.
Okay.
It's expanding rapidly right now.
It's gone down to the city of San Diego. I think Chula Vista's there, or coming along. You've done a demonstration for leaders in La Mesa, Santee. I think there's some value in being one of the early adopters as we look at these contracts. The people of El Cajon would say, geez, El Cajon's paying $1 when now Santee is paying 95 cents or 90 cents. And certainly we should get some value of being one of the first adopters that made it easy to sell this system to another city. So I think that's worth noting. Tell me about the safety to the officers. When you proactively know that a car is stolen, that would seem safer for the officer because he or she knows what they're going after versus stopping a car, not knowing who's inside for a traffic infraction or something. What's the safety for the officer and the public with the proactive system?
That's exactly right. I think it does increase officer safety, public safety. If somebody's driving around the city in a stolen car, they're up to no good, even if that no good is just driving around a stolen car. So having that information and the officers knowing that it's stolen before it's being stopped is certainly a benefit and advantage to them.
Yeah, I would think they would have I know what I'm stopping. I know what I'm getting into. I might need to call for backup right now because it's different than, I pulled somebody over and it's become a hot stop later or something.
Right.
So
They certainly approach it differently, yes.
yeah, that's a fantastic benefit for the public because if the officers aren't engaging right away in a quick decision scenario, then there's less likelihood for the public to be nearby and affected.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a great system. So I would support the Councilmember Mitchell's video. We had such great success with the documentary related to homeless services. I think a documentary that would answer a lot of the myths about privacy. We don't know who's driving the car because it takes a picture of the back license plate.
That's right.
But there's a myth out there that, you're targeting this kind of person or this kind of person. And we don't know who's driving until we stop the car. Those are the kind of things that could go in an educational video to dispel the myths. And again, there's a story to be told. Either you tell your story or somebody's going to tell it for you.
That's right.
Let's tell our story.
To go along with Councilman Goebel's idea of the video, I love that idea, Michelle. It's fantastic. I do want to say first, before I offer a proposal to my colleagues about this program, I think the idea that a message is being sent to the criminal element in our community that you're going to be caught and tell your friends is fantastic, and I think the public likes that we've caught an average of 16 and a half stolen vehicles a month, and there's even more arrests per month being made. I think that's a fantastic number that is increasing our police department's effectiveness and reducing crime, which is desperately needed because, in my opinion, the state is decriminalizing crime. I do think that, as my son's favorite comic book character, Spider-Man, said, with great power comes great responsibility. And so I'm going to float a couple of ideas to my colleagues that we could adopt, and I don't think it has to come today. It could be for a future one. But there are some legitimate concerns around the license plate reader program, and from all sides of the aisle. And I think if we were to come up with these three proposals and adopt them, it would quell some of those fears and those misconceptions as well. So the first one that I'll talk about is right now, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, we are only looking for vehicles that were involved in felony crimes or stolen vehicles. Is that right?
Correct. Our investigators have the ability to enter cars into what we call hot lists. So if a car was wanted in connection of an investigation or a crime, then we would see that as well. But as far as the national database goes that we run plates against, it's stolen vehicles, it's amber alerts, silver alerts, and felony vehicles.
Okay. And so I would like that to be codified in some way and decided upon by the council to quell some of those concerns, like Councilmember Mitchell said, that the public might have with regard to, oh, they're just going to get me for an out-of-date license plate registration. And so I would like the council to be able to vote on what crimes are going to be investigated and used by the license plate reader program. And that could be a collaborative effort between the police department and say, hey, here's the most serious crimes. We're going to use them for these, like Chief just said. But I don't want it out in the open and the public thinking that we're going to be doing things like Councilmember Mitchell said. So that's one idea. The second idea...
Just address that before. If you want to do that, I think you need to agendize it.
Right. Okay. And so at a future date, I think it would enhance public trust. And we don't need to vote this now. The second idea would be something along the lines of a 3 strikes and you're out. So some of the concerns that I've heard from the public is that the data will be misused. Here's 2 of the things that can go wrong. The storing of data and selling it, that's been an issue with other municipalities for license plate reader programs in the past. And so, and then the other one is placing cameras in sequential order on streets, basically mapping the entire city so you can track where you're going. I don't think we're doing that. I think we're doing it at choke points. Is that right?
We laid out the cameras with input from the vendor as to get the most coverage with the number of cameras we had.
Right.
And as far as selling data, that's a violation of state law.
That's
already
great.
codified in state law.
That's great. Okay. So that's something that we don't need to worry about. But the 3 strikes and you're out rule, if we're misusing this information or data, for example, if someone accesses the data to stalk their ex-spouse and we find out about it, that's a misuse of data and it's a misuse of public trust. And so I think there should be some kind of rule that we impose on ourselves to make sure that if this is happening continuously, then we're not responsible enough to have that data. So I'll leave it to the chief and our city manager to kind of come up with some kind of a accountability piece that if this data is being misused, then what are the consequences and how far will it go till we say we obviously can't manage this. And then the last one is the time to keep data. I think some of the concerns, they said some license plate reader program store data for a year. We don't do that though, do we? How long is ours?
We keep it for 30 days.
Okay, so that's a super short amount of time. Maybe reviewing how often we have to go back in time to look at data. Maybe it's only a week, maybe 4 weeks is enough, but maybe reviewing that to make sure we're not holding on to the data longer than we need to, because the longer we hold on to data, the more likelihood there is for it to be abused and misused. So something along the lines of a 3 strikes, accountability piece, whatever the system is being used for, it has to be approved by the council, and obviously we're going to be guided by the police department expertise, and then the time to completion of data. Other than that, I think it's a good program. We're taking methamphetamine, fentanyl, felons off the street, and it's going to help our community tremendously if it hasn't already.
Great. Steve, anything? There's a lot of things going around, but whenever we get to that point where we're starting to educate the public more, I would like to ask that we educate the public that this is not part of us becoming a 15-minute city. There is some rumor flying around that Graham went to Davos, Switzerland, and signed us up to become part of the 15-minute cities. And it sounds silly, but I think we need to make that clear that this is not part of that plan.
We're using this technology to make El Cajon citizens safer by taking criminals off the street.
I know. Sometimes we just have to tell people. So, because I get lots of phone calls about it. So.
I'll bet.
All right. Thanks, Chief. I appreciate that. I think we're good. I'm going to see if there's any.
I think staff needs some follow-up. One is we heard, based on the feedback, that we will bring back a flock contract for city council consideration at the next city council meeting. We'll put that on consent. In a perfect world, if the council wanted to do, and we need some direction on this, directing staff to develop a resolution or a policy resolution as suggested by Mr. Ortiz, then ideally we would bring that back at the same time as we bring back the flock agreement and have two separate agreements. The reality is I think there's some nuances in there that I would not want to tie our hands. I want to analyze it pretty carefully to understand what the impacts are. Sometimes the state of California will adopt legislation such as police officers can't talk to Border Patrol. And I understand the reason why, but now if there's a pursuit on the freeway, we can't communicate with them. That makes no sense, right? So I want to make sure that we think through all the nuances and then we could bring that back. So if the council wants to move forward with that resolution and have staff do that, it wouldn't happen at the next meeting. So I just want to let council be aware of that, if that's okay.
Great. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Before we go further, is that really a thing? Are our police officers not allowed to talk to Border Patrol agents?
We're limited on our ability to talk to the federal government about immigration issues, correct?
But if it was about a stolen car or something like that, could we?
There are some areas in which we can, but there are some limitations too.
I'd love to get a white paper about that sometime. That's frightening. Okay, are there any speaker cards for this item?
No speaker cards were received, sir.
Okay, well, this is just an informational item. I think staff's got all the direction they need. Does anybody else want to add anything else before we call it? All right, thanks very much. Item 11 is regarding a business facade and sign improvement grant, and I'm going to ask our city manager to tell us all about this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. The city, using COVID money and some ARPA money, had implemented a small business grant program over the last several years, which just recently expired. And through those grants, we were able to help 247 businesses. And as you recall, the grants were to either help businesses with capital improvements or some tenant improvements, or they could use it to help hire individuals. And through that grant, 333 individuals were hired, which is pretty impressive that we were able to get employment for 333 people or encourage employment for over 300 individuals. That, as I said, that grant has expired, and we have some additional ARPA money, and I'll address that in a minute. But as we drive around the city, we see there's a need for the exterior of businesses. The last grant really focused on interior, on capital equipment, on employees. But as we drive around the city, there's a lot of signs that are a bit outdated, a lot of facade. The paint doesn't match where graffiti abatement has occurred. And so we think there's an opportunity to help our local businesses by investing in them through this program. So what we're presenting today is the opportunity to create a grant program that would be aimed at investing in our local businesses using ARPA money, the economic development component of that money that we have set aside. We would recommend creating two grants. One would be for signage, up to $20,000 per sign, and then a separate grant for paint, $15,000 for facade paint. We think, based on these numbers, we could assist 30 businesses if $500,000 of ARPA money is allocated to this. What our thinking is, if the goal is to upgrade the signage, and we're using federal money, there's an opportunity for the city to encourage a higher standard of signage. So what staff would recommend is that we limit the ability to use the grant money for specifically 3 types of signs: channel letter signs, dimensional signs, and then blade signs. I'll show you a couple examples of what those would look like. So channel letter signs are those that are, they stick out. A lot of times they're illuminated, they're separate, and those are just some examples on the screen of what a channel letter sign looks like. Dimensional signs are typically on a single piece of material, but they have dimension, they pop out, and so it's part of one sign. They're not individual letters per se, but they're attached to something, and that can also help a business have its signage pop. And then blade signs, an example of blade signs, it's pretty explanatory, but just signs that sort of stick out from the building. And we actually have in our downtown some existing blade signs, but if you were to walk by, and we didn't show those in this presentation, they're pretty aged and could use a replacement. So those are some examples of what we would recommend be the signs eligible. Signs that we would recommend not being eligible would be temporary signs, such as banners, paper signs, window signs, in other words, painting in a window, or open for business, neon sign within a window, electronic message signs, in part because those are expensive and $20,000 wouldn't go very far. Monument signs, again, expensive, doesn't really impact the facade of the business. A-frame signs, and then cabinet signs, and then what are called panel signs. I'll give you some examples of what cabinet signs look like. We see these all over. They're legal. They're allowed by the code, but they don't pop. They don't add a lot of quality to the front of the business. And then panel signs. Here's some examples of panel signs. Typically, it's plywood or sheet metal with just painting on it, and then attached or affixed to the facade of the building. The one on the left is a bit of an extreme, but it was a good example I found. We also would recommend that the grant, the $15,000 per business, be allowed for paint. We had some discussion about limiting the specific paint colors, but in the end of the day, I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. I think there's some value to have some diversity amongst paint. However, a couple things that staff would recommend is that I would not want to see, or we would not want to see, the grant be used to paint a building Pepto-Bismol pink. I think that wouldn't fit with the character of the neighboring businesses, and I think the city would draw some criticism for that. So we would recommend these 3 criteria be implemented as part of the grant program. One is it is consistent with the neighboring businesses. That doesn't mean it has to be the exact same, but it's consistent. There's some consistency with. To avoid overpowering or colors that are specifically meant to distract or to attract. And then our ability to match with our graffiti abatement company. So there are some standard paints that they used from major paint companies, distributors. We would need to be able to match those paints. And if you were to see the amount of paint that exists at our graffiti abatement contractor, they have lots of options, but there's just some colors they cannot match because they're specialty colors or are specially mixed colors. So staff would recommend that as well. So with that, staff would, if given direction to create the program, we would develop the program. We'd bring, in a memo format, the parameters back to the city council, not for approval, but just to let you know what we're going to be doing. And then we would market that program. We would recommend that the council allocate $500,000 in the ARPA economic development money to this. And there's a resolution attached to the staff report that staff would like the city council, recommends the city council consider. So with that, we're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Graham. Questions? Michelle?
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. It was a good presentation, and I like this idea. I think that we're trying to beautify El Cajon. Could you explain to the public on why we're using ARPA funds, $500,000, why we can't use those funds for, say, homeless or, other projects? Why for business facade and sign improvement?
So the city council can use those ARPA funds for homelessness if the council wanted to. But when the city council looked at the almost $30 million in ARPA money that it was receiving, the city council allocated certain pots of money for specific activities. One of those pots, $4 million, was allocated to economic development. We have programmed a lot of that money, the majority of that money. There's $1 million left over. We had set aside some of that for a food hall establishment, as you recall. That project fell through, so that $1 million is available. Staff would continue to recommend using that for economic development purposes. The value of using it for economic development, it creates more revenue, then we can use that to solve other problems. And we have set aside a significant amount thus far for homelessness. So I wouldn't recommend any additional ARPA money for homelessness.
Don't get me wrong. I approve of this, and I like the idea. I'm just trying to make sure that the public understands where it was coming from.
And that would be, I mean, I gave that explanation so that's the public can understand kind of how we came up with that and how we prioritize those funds.
Got it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Just to clarify with regarding the painting of a facade, practically, what does that look like? So just the exterior of the building around the signage, it's hasn't been painted in a while, it's faded, it's chipping, and so $15,000, get a new coat of paint, brighten up the area, make it look good.
Correct, and potentially some trim work as well around the doors, around the windows. Exactly right. Just get out and repaint the outside.
Give it a facelift.
Correct.
We love it. Great.
What's your thought on company-owned or franchised locations of national brands? Would they be eligible?
That's a good question. As you recall, during the last grant program, we did. There were some businesses that were not eligible if you owned a certain number of franchises or if they're nationally branded. To make this program simple, staff would recommend we actually just allow it for all businesses. As we drove around the city and looked at franchised businesses or nationally branded businesses, most of them have facade maintenance programs or they have the signage that meets the criteria. And if they don't, let's say that Quality Inn sign wasn't taken in El Cajon, but let's say Quality Inn wants to upgrade, I would love to see them to have a better facade. So I think we wouldn't be opposed to that, but if the council wanted to limit it like you did in the last one, I think that would be appropriate too. I think that's more of a council policy direction.
Okay. I'm also thinking of a national diner brand, which is a franchise over on Mollison, which has a sign that is at least 30 years old. They just haven't paid to update it to the current standards, and I'm surprised the brand hasn't enforced that. So you're saying that would be eligible. It would cost probably more than the allowance.
Probably. Yeah.
Okay. What about glass? What if an exterior has broken glass and things like that? Would you consider that as part of this program?
We didn't, but if that's something the council sees a need for, I think that would be quite appropriate. I think that is in line with a poor paint job or dilapidated paint, having replacement of glass. My fear would be, though, I don't know, maybe I'm talking out loud right now. I could see someone with perfectly good windows, but maybe single pane, and replacing a single pane with double pane, which would save them money, but it really wouldn't improve the look of the business. That would be my only concern, but if that's something that, if the council's okay with investing ARPA money in that, I think staff would be okay with that too.
I think my interest is more currently cracked, chipped,
broken,
BB hole, things that are not pure in appearance.
If the council were okay with that, I think we could add that as one of the things that added as an eligible grant program.
Well, glass isn't that expensive. The landlords often have restrictions on signs, the amount of square footage versus the frontage, things like that. So I think we're okay there. My concern is backlit signs. Driving down Broadway and Main Street during the night, it's starting to look like Las Vegas with these chasing LED lights that rim the windows. So if somebody wanted to create a backlit light with a pink neon Do you have the ability to weigh in on that?
Well, a lot of these channel lettered signs. Oh, I'm not showing. Here we go. A lot of these channel letter signs they are backlit. I mean, there are lights behind it. If the council wanted to eliminate moving backlit signs, so you could imagine the recharge or the recharge business that you see, the restaurant. If the council wanted to, I mean, someone could develop a sign that, the R lights up red and then the E lights up red and it kind of sequentially goes. If the council wants to limit that, I think that's fine. But I think you do want signs that are backlit or have lighting to be seen at night. But I think what you're saying is you don't want the moving signs.
No, I don't want a bright pink backlit.
Oh, the backlit part, not just the letter, but the backlit.
The color of the light in the backlit portion, white is a very common, or a soft blue is a very common, but if we start getting different colors of backlight, a neon green and neon pink, now we're starting really to lose the professionalism of some of these signs, and that's my concern. Do you have the ability to weigh in on that?
Probably. I start worrying about the same reason we worried about the color of the paint. At some point, do we need a design review board to look at every single sign to say, so that would be my only concern is how do we draft it and what happens if Vince is okay with mauve, but I'm not okay, right? So I think that's where we'll have to figure that out.
I'm not, if for only 30 applicants that you're projecting, we're probably not that cost benefit of time to develop that. I'm just saying, hey, if you get an application that is in the middle of Broadway where it's really not lit up at night and then it's bright lit that stands out in a not professional way. I don't know how to describe what not professional is, but
I get what you're saying. I think one of the things that we're going to offer as part of this program is our marketing engagement manager, Chris Berg, has graphic design experience. One of the things that we want to provide these businesses is a little bit of, business consulting and say, here are examples of signs, here's what works. And Mr. Goebel, maybe that's where we can use that influence to show what would look good on their business.
Okay, you've heard my concern. I think I'm good.
My concern is basically the same. It seems to me that since we're paying for this and we're under no obligation to do this, I think it's perfectly reasonable for us to have design standards and to basically tell somebody, say, yeah, give us your idea. We're going to have one of our staff members look over it. If they say no and you want to appeal it to the planning commission, then you can do that or something to that effect. But I think we should, so much of our efforts these days are making sure that we don't offend anybody and we don't want to get sued. And I think we're overcomplicating. I think we say, we're offering to help. Let us look what your ideas are. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not really what we're thinking about. If you want to reapply, go ahead. If not, okay, thanks. To me, that's the way to do it. But I don't think we should just have a by right kind of thing if you check off these boxes, because people will find ways to do weird things. And I think everybody here is trying to achieve the same goal, which is to uplift the overall appearance of El Cajon.
I like the idea of, well, I'll tell you my concern with the paint colors, moving signs, all those things, is it puts a lot of, back to Spider-Man's quote, with power comes responsibility. It puts a lot of responsibility in staff's lap where there's really no valve to appeal. And typically under a grant program, there's not really an appeal process. But if the council likes the idea of maybe appealing to the planning commission, that would give us that safety valve, I think. So if that's something the council likes.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay. then I think with that, I think it does allow us to be a little bit more robust in creating a standard that we think is appropriate.
Just a very quick question. The dollar amounts, 15,000 and 20,000, is that about, how do we come up with those numbers? Is that about the cost of a sign? And
We
painting?
talked to some sign people and
Okay.
looked at paint costs. And there's probably going to be some businesses. I mean, there's corner businesses or businesses that are standalone that would be far more than $15,000 in paint, right? And you could go really big on a sign or elaborate on a sign that's probably far more than $20,000. But I think you can get a really good, decent sign to replace an existing panel sign for $20,000.
Okay, so it might cost, or it might cover the entire cost of
Correct.
the project. For that. Okay,
Correct.
Great.
Okay, let me see if there's any speaker cards on this item.
No speaker cards were received, sir.
Okay, then we're looking for a motion to approve the $500,000.
I'll make a motion to adopt the next resolution allocating $500,000. I'd like to amend the staff recommendation to include glass replacement for cracked, broken, chipped, or otherwise damaged glass.
Anybody want to second that? All right. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
Item 12 is to consider appointments for Measure J City Council Ad Hoc Subcommittee. And I'll ask the city manager to please tell us about this.
Mayor, members of council, this is sort of a companion item to what you dealt with at the last city council meeting when you made a decision to allocate $182,000 to retain a polling consultant and do some examination of gauging the public interest in perhaps extending Proposition J/Measure J. Councilmember Goebel had a suggestion to appoint an ad hoc subcommittee to be participating in the process of working with the pollster in this effort. Staff sees quite a bit of value in that, and so it really is a decision for the council, and I'll turn it over to the council to consider and make the appointment.
Okay. Any questions?
So, Steve, Mr. Goebel, this is something that you want to do, correct?
Yes, my purpose here is not to direct the consultant, but just provide oversight to make sure that the goal is getting accomplished.
Well, my recommendation would be for you and Mr. Ortiz to do that if he is willing to do so. I believe that you are. And you guys are the facts and figure guys. I'm more the emotional punching person. So I recommend that we appoint Mr. Goebel and Mr. Ortiz to the ad hoc committee unless the mayor has another idea.
Just want to go through procedure first. Let me see if there's any speaker cards on this item. Are there any speaker cards on this item?
No speaker cards were received, sir.
Okay, now I'll bring it back to the city council for discussion and a motion.
Thank you, Michelle. I'd be willing to serve on the committee. Yeah, good.
Then I move that we appoint Mr. Goebel and Mr. Ortiz to be the ad hoc subcommittee for Measure J.
All right, I'll second that. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
The last administrative item is item 13. It's an introduction of an ordinance regarding the salaries of council members and the mayor. And I'll ask the city manager to please tell us about this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. As you know, the salary for the mayor and city council members are established by the municipal code, specifically section 2.16.020. For the last 4 years, the city council has been considering this every other year. And just so you know how it works, and this is maybe good for the public to understand, a city council cannot vote for a raise for themselves. It has to apply to the next sitting city council. So the next time a raise can go into effect would be after the next municipal election. For years, the city did not address the compensation of the city council, and so about when I started as city manager, we realized that the council hadn't had a raise in salary or increase in salary for quite some time. And so I think it was at least a 15-20% increase in salary because it hadn't been addressed for so many years. Since that time, we've been doing it every 2 years, so we kind of keep up, and it's smaller incremental increases rather than these big swings. So the next municipal election is in November of 2024. So staff would actually recommend we start looking at the salary of the mayor and city council. We did do some analysis, and we looked at the cost or the CPI or the inflation rate in the last year was 3.45%. Using the cost of living that most employees are receiving in the upcoming year, which is 3%, using sort of those two figures, staff would recommend over the 2-year period that the city council get a salary increase of 6.45%, which would not go into effect until after the next election. I present this slide to you just so you can get a sense of where the city is in terms of mayoral salary, and then I have one for the city council salary as well. Right now, looking at both the monthly compensation as well as the other category, and for most of this is car allowance. There are some cities that have technology allowances and some other allowances. We currently rank third in the comparable cities that we usually compare ourselves with, including our 2 neighboring cities in East County. I should also point out that we are one of the lowest cities in terms of health benefits that is provided to the city council, which mirrors that of city staff. I think the average is about $1,800 a month, and we're at about $1,450 a month. So we're a few $100s less per month than the other cities. But that kind of gives you a sense of where we're at currently as of January 2023, when the last raise went into effect. Again, we were third. Assuming the council were to apply a 6.5% salary increase for the mayor's salary, we would still remain in that third position. Looking at the city council salary is, we're fifth in our comparison cities. When you add in car allowance, if the 6.45% salary rate is applied, we would still be in that fifth position. So this does not swing the council one way or the other in looking at the neighboring cities. So with that, I can answer any questions that you have. HR did the salary comparisons on this, and staff would recommend, after answering any questions, that the city council introduce the ordinance amending the municipal code to affect the increases in salary, which, by the way, and I didn't include this in my presentation, is not a huge dollar amount. I think it's $140 for city council and a little over $200 for the mayor per month. So with that, staff's here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Graham. Questions? All right. Are there any speaker cards from this item?
No speaker cards were received, sir.
All right. Back to council for motion or discussion.
Well, it's always kind of weird voting for an increase for your own salary. It's all just break the ice with that one. But some of my thoughts on paying for elected officials, I think there's an inherent value that the pay reflects a part-time job. And I think that should be applied to a lot of elected official positions, because if you can't make a living off of this and you can't get rich off of it, then the type of person that this job is going to attract will have the heart of a volunteer. And that's the type of person that you want leading your community. And I think that even with this pay increase, and as most of the other cities are reflecting pay, you're going to keep attracting that heart of a volunteer, because you can't get rich off of this and you can't make a living off of this. So I'm comfortable keeping this pay in that realm of attracting that type of person, whoever is elected for the near future. So yeah, I'd make a motion to approve the ordinance as outlined in the staff report.
All right. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present, and the title reads, An Ordinance Repealing Section 2.16.020 of Chapter 2.16 and adding a new Section 2.16.020 of Chapter 2.16 of the El Cajon Municipal Code, adjusting salaries of council members and mayor effective January 1st, 2025.
Thank you. All right, there are no commissioner reports on today's agenda. Item 14 is my activities report, which is as reported. We're activities reports now for council members. Start with Mr. Goebel.
As reported with a comment, I had a chance to sit down with Pastor Roland Slade out at Meridian Baptist Church last Friday. That's where we have the 6 tiny home villages, and it's been operational for about 9 months. In those 9 months, they have helped 19 women and 13 children in 9 months. So that's 32 people in 9 months through those 6 cabins. So that's an average, really, of 3 families per cabin for the past 9 months. One of the persons still living there, transitioning out of there, got a job with a government agency. She will get health benefits, a retention bonus of $3,000 to $5,000 after 90 days. She'll get a retirement plan and all the other good things that come along with that employment. Another mother and daughter combo. Her daughter is 7 years old. They live in this 8 foot by, well, it's 80 square feet or something like that. 8 foot by 12 feet, 96 square feet. The mother is a 3rd generation homeless person in her family. Her grandmother was homeless in El Cajon. Her mother was homeless. She's been homeless in El Cajon. And now her 7-year-old daughter lives with her. She finally said, enough. You know, my kid's going to become homeless, and then her kid if we don't stop it. So she put a stop to that, and now she has a job and an apartment. So great things happening at Meridian in just 9 months. 32 people, 19, makes me emotional. 19 adults, 13 kids.
Great work, and you've done a lot to foster that. Mr. Ortiz.
One addition to the League of California Cities meeting yesterday I attended, and the EDC, East County Economic Development Council, Gillespie Field Committee meeting this morning at 7:30.
Okay, Ms. Mitchell.
I just have one addition. I didn't put down that I did the videotaping like everybody else. Also, I have a question for you, Mr. Goebel. Do you know how much it cost to provide for these 19 women in the 9 months? Did you get a chance to talk dollars?
It's not much because Feeding San Diego provides the meals. The church has a rule that you do not have to participate in any of their activities as a condition of staying there. So their food's provided for, the utilities are provided for by the church. They get hygiene and showers and clothing there at the church. So it is minimal to no cost to the program. And they have an address there so that people know where to find them.
So my point of asking you that, and I think this has been a wonderful program, my point in asking Mr. Goebel this is that the county got $1.1 million recently to help 49 people with homelessness. We do it in El Cajon with, if you put it out, we do it far less cheaper and a lot better. So I just wanted to make sure that Mr. Goebel knew that this is why I was asking, is because I think we're doing a much better job than what the county has done with their $1.1 million that we don't know what is going for. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox on that one. And yes, as reported with the one video session added.
I'll add to the county's paying $147 per night for a motel voucher when the market rate, if you walk off the street, is $75 to $95. So it's a little over $6,000 per month for a shelter in one of our motels. The county recently offered to pay for 100 pallet homes if a site would volunteer their site. Well, it's not going to work. And the reason why it won't work is because there's nothing in it for the site. So I would say to the county, you know what, give the site $1,000 per cabin, up to $5,000 as rent. And that covers the wear and tear on the property. That covers the infrastructure to help build that. And now you may have some sites that'll say, a VFW hall. Oh, well, if you're going to pay me $5,000 a month to put 6 cabins up here, we're in because we're going to choose military veterans because that's our brothers and sisters. Now that's much more attractive. Just to say we'll pay for 100 pallet homes falls short. So we'll keep pressing on this because people in El Cajon say keep pressing.
Okay. Thanks very much. All right. There are no joint council member reports, no general information items, no first or second readings of ordinances on today's agenda, and that brings us to closed session. Our city attorney will recite the titles and lead us into the closed session.
Thank you, Mayor Wells. The City Council will be meeting in closed session on 2 items. First is a closed session for a conference with labor negotiations pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. The agency's designated representatives are Graham Mitchell, Vince DiMaggio, Clay Shane, and Marisol Thorne. The organizations to negotiate with will be El Cajon Police Officers Association and El Cajon Police Officers Association Management Group. The second there are 3 closed sessions. Second closed session is a conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is located at 405 East Lexington Avenue. The city is negotiating with Centro de Salud de la Comunidad de San Isidro, Inc., and Kevin Matson as the CEO, and the city manager, assistant city manager, and city attorney are negotiating on behalf of the city. Under negotiation will be price and terms for payment of acquisition of the property. And the final item, number 21, is a conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. Same property, 405 East Lexington Avenue. The negotiations will be with the San Diego Chaldean Community Council, with Dr. Nori Barca being the representative. City negotiators are the city manager, the assistant city manager, and city attorney. And it's for purposes of discussing and negotiating price in terms of payment of a lease of that same property.
All right, I'll make a motion then to adjourn the closed session. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go into closed session for just a short time and come back and conclude the meeting. Thank you very much. Okay, we are back from closed session. I'll have our city attorney report on the actions taken in closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I should mention that the mayor was disqualified from participating in items 20 and 21 on the basis that one of the parties involved is a source of income to his business. On item 19, direction was given to the city's negotiators. On item 20 and 21, no decisions were made, and they will be brought back to the next meeting on January 23rd.
Thank you, Councilor. This brings us to the adjournment, the regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 9th day of January 2024, is adjourned till Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024 at 3 o'clock p.m. Thank you very much.